one of my friends on the way back down slipped and was falling and was just like careening down the side of the mountain. And it's not like when you're on a ski slope and there's barriers or even like caution tape or anything like that. I mean, you're just climbing. And I mean, luckily she was able to catch a rock and she stopped. But I was just like, I didn't even panic at that point. I was like, okay, bye. Because it's like no oxygen up there. And it's like, you can't even process like anything. I was like, all right, well, I guess that's it. See ya. And again, no great epiphanies except just like how small I am.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Being Movement, where we inspire you to take action, influence you for change, and motivate you for success. Hi, I'm your host and coach, Len DeCarmine, and we have an extraordinary show for you today. We are going to be talking about how to create a winner's mindset with our special guest today. But before we get into that, I have to introduce, of course, my two favorite co-hosts, the one and only Christopher Shiver.
Yeah, I'm first today.
I try to be fair on this show. Chris, what's going on?
I'm excited today because today we're going to talk about my favorite sport, and that's football.
Football? Is it football or soccer?
I don't know. That's a good question. Actually, I learned today that there is a sport already called handball. I had no idea it was existed.
Well, you learn something new, buddy.
Every day.
Every day. We'll get into why you never heard about handball here in a moment. Hey, Fred Martinez, what's going on?
I'm doing great. Hey, Chris, get off the couch. Start playing.
There you go, man. Play the game of life. Get out there.
It's a medicine ball, man.
There's more to sports. Like gaming is not a sport, man. I'm being honest.
I'm insulted.
Video games is not a sport. It's because you can play Wii bowling or something. It's not a real sport. So let's talk about this winner's mindset. Let's talk about actually doing sports, the benefits of it, with our special guest that we have today. We have the one and only Danielle Fagan. She's here with us today. She is out to make a difference in the lives of youth athletes on and off the field, learning life lessons through sports. She's using these life lessons to train the next generation of players, coaches, and ultimately creating champions in business, sports, wellness, and life. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I appreciate that. Look, Danielle, I was reading your bio. I have to say I'm super impressed. You're a former Division I soccer and softball athlete, and in 2007, you climbed Kilimanjaro.
Yep.
Share more about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because it wasn't even anything that was like a bucket list item or anything that I had dreamt of doing. And I had met some coaches at a soccer coaching course the year before, and this mass email went out saying, hey, who wants to climb Kilimanjaro and go on safari in the Serengeti? And I was like, oh, I do. Why not? Which is, it's interesting. I mean, I just kind of jumped at it. I'm not a real spontaneous person. I'm a planner and I organize everything. Now, I did spend the next year planning this trip, but yeah, it was awesome. It was probably the most physically, emotionally, mentally challenging adventure of a lifetime. And, people ask me, oh, would you do it again? And no, not because I didn't like it, but it's kind of like, now I checked that off and what's next. But yeah, so like I prepared, I planned, but there was really no way to really plan for it and prepare for everything. And what's been really cool too, is it's interesting you bring that up, is I then used that trip to map out an entire season for my high school team, my high school soccer team that I was coaching. So that fall, I went in February of 2007, and then that fall, I used the entire trip to map out our whole season. So we set goals as if we were climbing Kilimanjaro, and just mapped our entire like preseason, regular season, postseason, right onto that. And I got to share my experiences with the team and use everything that I learned climbing a mountain and showing them how we're climbing a mountain as a team together to reach the state finals.
No, I mean, this is awesome. You're the first guest we've had that has done something like this, that has climbed this huge mountain. And, I'm impressed by it. I mean, that's awesome. Absolutely awesome. When you were on that journey, did anything like really come to you? Were you like any type of mindfulness or enlightenment, that resonated with you while you were climbing that mountain?
Oh man, so there were so many moments. Hard to distill it into like one thing, but
No, you can share a couple of them.
okay. Well, so one thing that really stood out was, we climbed it took 4.5 days to get to the summit, and we climbed. So the first 4 days, it was, it was kind of like being on a hike. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but they were all different climates and whatnot. But then when we got to base camp, and when we did our summit, we left at 11 o'clock at night. And because with the goal of getting to the summit at sunrise. And as I'm walking up the mountain, and you're walking at like a snail's pace.
Mm.
And I had two thoughts I had three thoughts while I was walking. One, when are we going to stop and go to the bathroom? And it was like 15 degrees below. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and they kept yelling out potty. And I'm like, oh, this is so great. We're going to get to stop and go to the bathroom. Well, they had nicknamed the guy that one of the mountain guides potty. So the whole time I'm thinking, oh, this is great. We're going to get to go. So there was that, like, okay, how do you control your bladder while hiking up a mountain in -15 for 6 or 7 hours? Then my other thought was, now I grew up in Massachusetts. I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia right now. My other thought was, wow, I did this trip a number of times because this is where I went to college. So I could drive back and forth with my eyes closed. I'm like, wow, in the amount of time it takes me to drive from my hometown to college is the amount of time it's going to take me to walk to the top of this mountain.
Wow.
And yeah, and I was like, wow, I cannot believe I'm just going to be hiking for that long in the pitch black. Again, not like that, not like these are like crazy epiphanies that I've had. It was just more like, wow, how oversimplified can we become? Like, I thought about like driving in a car, having to go to the bathroom, like a basic need. And then it became really clear that survival was a big deal. Like everything that I had taken for granted, because we got to about 600 feet from the top, and we could see the sun coming up, and then the rest of that last stretch from right where we were, I forget what it was called, but all the way to the top you're on the glacier, which is melting, and they said it was going to be melted by 2020, which seemed like a long time away in 2007. But anyway, it was literally climbing up a glacier.
Wow.
And I mean, I was walking at a snail's pace at this point. I mean, it just like one step at a time. It took forever to get to the top, but then getting up to the top, and then literally it was like you're looking out over, it looks like the world. And there's nothing up there, except, the summit with the sign, and it's just a glacier. That's it. And then people walking up and walking back down. And really what became the survival part is one of my friends on the way back down slipped and was falling and was just like careening down the side of the mountain. And it's not like when you're on a ski slope and there's barriers or even like caution tape or anything like that. I mean, you're just climbing. And I mean, luckily she was able to catch a rock and she stopped, but I was just like, I didn't even panic at that point. I was like, okay, bye. Because it's like no oxygen up there. And it's like, you can't even process like anything. I was like, all right, well, I guess that's it. See ya. And, again, no great epiphanies, except just like how small I am. And it wasn't even like, yay, I made it to the top. It was just like, oh my gosh, I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I still have to go to the bathroom. Although one thing that I did notice on part of the climb, this was before the summit attempt, is the sky. because there's no lights up there. And the sky, I remember looking up at one point, and I turned to our head guide and I said, this looks like a planetarium. And he said, a what? And of course he didn't know what a planetarium was, but it's just like, it's like a sky I've never seen anywhere in the world, just because it's just so pure. There's nothing up there. And again, you got to remember, this is before like we had smartphones and everything climbing up there. So it was like really being off the grid, and like you knew that you were off the grid because it was just nature. There was no like lights that you could see. There wasn't even lights you could see off in the distance.
You're making me homesick. You're making me homesick right now. Don't do this.
Yeah?
I'm from that part of the world. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I know exactly. The sky is.
Yeah, the sky. I even, you know, if my camera couldn't really capture pictures of it, but yeah, I don't know. It just becomes so simple, like water, food, you know, just yeah. And not to get like, again, not a big epiphany, just like, wow, what am I worried about?
The one thing that pops in my mind was hearing. In my mind, I start visualizing like crevasses that you have to go ahead and like there's a ladder and you have to walk across. Did you run across anything like that, knowing how the risk and the danger behind all that?
Yeah. So the scariest part of the entire climb, this was actually pre-summit. It was like the day before the summit. It's an area called like the Kissing Ledge or the Kissing Stone. And essentially what it is it's a very small ledge where like my whole foot couldn't fit on it. And I'm a small person. I'm 5'2". I have a size 7 foot. So it's not like I take up a lot of space. So that was an advantage and a disadvantage. And what it is that you're going from one edge to another, and they call it the Kissing Stone because you face the wall of the mountain. You're literally almost kissing it, because if you step back, you're gone. And so my foot's partially off the ledge. But here's the part that made my wingspan a disadvantage, because, you know, the tall guy that I was with, he was like 6'4". He could stick his one hand out and be holding the guide on the one side and then put his other hand out, and the guide so he always was attached. So to help him get across the ledge. Now for me, I'm holding on this side, but for me to reach the guy on the other side, I had to let go with my left hand.
Wow.
And in that moment, it was just like that, you know, like just, it's almost like, have you ever been on any of those like free fall? I mean, I didn't fall, right? But those like free fall, like amusement rides, you know, like where everything just drops in your stomach. I had that like internal, like the feeling. I wasn't falling. Again, I was just like, oh my God, I could actually die here. And that's actually one of the stories that I shared with my high school team. And it was like, I had to trust to let go on the one side, to grab the hand of the other, the guide on the other, and get across. And that was scarier than going to the summit, honestly.